Hi there, my name is Jennifer Lantrip, and I'm a health sciences student success librarian. And today I'm going to talk to you about developing an evidence-based learning practice. And so we'll be talking about evidence-based study strategies that you can incorporate into your own toolkit to use in your courses here at Pacific. And so one of the things you might want to be thinking about is basically like in your undergraduate degree, or maybe as you're going between different courses or different semesters, you may need to be changing your study strategies and then adapting them for your new environments, whether it's just the optometry program in general, or from one class to a different class, or from one semester to a different semester, because you want to be thinking about like how well you're learning everything, and then what tools you need, what strategies you need to use to learn the material and to retain the material so that you can use it. Um, you're also going to need to retain this material long term, because you'll need it as you go into your classes, like later on, and you go into clinics and you actually have to like use the information and put it into practice. And so just keep in mind that these strategies are really going to help you with long-term retention of the material so you can actually use it. And also, one thing to keep in mind is that one strategy that works well for one person will not necessarily work for another person. And so your goal is really to find the strategy that works best for you. And so don't be intimidated by what's working for other people. Really pay attention to yourself and think of get your own toolkit of strategies and figure out when you're going to use one or when you're going to use another one. I wanted to encourage you to think about growth mindset. And so growth mindset is the idea that you can always learn and grow, and that you just need to find the right tools to be able to do so. And so if you are not sure, if you're not sure, if you're not like learning as you would like to, or you feel stuck, just realize like you just need to find the right strategies in order to learn. In order to do that, you really need to be applying you're using metacognition, and the metacognition is the idea that you're always thinking about your own thinking about how you're going about things, and being aware of your own yourself. And so basically what you want to do is consider really carefully how well you're learning something, how well you're retaining it, and then what is working well for you and what you might need to change. I also wanted to just remind you about Bloom's taxonomy. And this is the idea that whenever you're learning something, you'll start at the lower levels of this pyramid. So you basically, if you learn a new concept, you might just need to start out by remembering it. Next, after you can remember it, you might need to really understand how it works. And then your next step would be, after you understand it, to be able to apply it. Like, how can I apply it in one situation versus another? The next one might be where you're analyzing something, and then evaluating. Maybe you're figuring out when to use it in one way, when to use it in another. And then creating is when you're maybe creating something even new. And so when you're in your your first levels of this program, you'll probably be doing more like remembering and understanding. And then as you're progressing, you'll be needing to apply, analyze, create, and evaluate the information. And so just be aware that be thinking about whatever your class you're in, what your goal is at that time. What do you need to do then? Do you need to just remember something, or do you really need to be able to analyze it right now? Um, and then also think about when you are learning something, try to understand how you might be using it in the future, because and this can be helpful by asking your professors for context, and it can also be helpful to ask your peer tutors, because they, if you're doing peer tutoring at the Center for Learning and Student Success, because they'll be able to tell you, okay, you learned that in this course, but maybe in your second year, you'll start using it like this. So that can give you that kind of context to help understand that. And one of the things I wanted to point out is that these learning strategies feel difficult. They can feel difficult. That is because they're actually really making your brain work, and they're basically like strengthening your neural pathways. And so you really are going to retain that information. So it can feel challenging, but it's actually quite efficient and it's going to help with long-term retention of the material. So if you get just two things out of these slides, I want you to remember space practice and retrieval practice. So spaced and retrieval. These are two really fantastic study strategies that are evidence-based. So space practice is when you space out your studying with at least 1 day in between where you have slept. And sleep is very important for your long-term memory and for retention because sleep is where you're putting information into your long-term memory and you're also like processing information. And so ideally, if you could, the ideal situation is where you would study for something over a period of at least 3 days. So you would study it 3 times with at least 1 night of sleep in between. And by the time you've studied it that third time, you're almost like you're very unlikely to forget that information. Like it's going to be stuck in your mind. And so this is really important because it helps you retain the material long term. It's also much more efficient because if you spend 3 hours studying the day before your exam, or you spend 3 hours spread out over 3 days, you will retain more material when it's spread out over 3 days. So it's actually much more efficient. It also reduces your stress level because have you ever just kind of like noticed how if you just look at what you have to do on an assignment or you get started on something, even if it's a few minutes, then just seeing what you have to do can lower your stress level because then you have that time to start thinking about what it is. Then you have time to think like, okay, I think this is actually going to take me about this much time to do. But if you haven't looked at it at all, you don't know like how long it's going to take you. And that just that unknown can cause stress. And so I really want to encourage you that for your assignments, check them out early and get started early and really space them out. Space practice also allows you to be much more creative. And so this is because when you have time to think about things, you are able to solve problems and think of new creative ideas. And so I'm sure you've all experienced this when you get to the end of the day and you're so tired and fed up and you have some problem and you can't figure it out. And then you go to sleep and you wake up the next day and everything seems easier. So you also just all of a sudden you see a solution to that problem, or you see another way of doing it, or you see another option. And so that time when just let yourself that waiting time, that gives you creativity and um, it just lowers your stress level and it enables you to see things in a different way. So space practice is so important, not just for like studying, but also for projects, because if you can get started on your project sooner, like if it's a writing assignment or whatever you're doing, you're going to have more time to think creatively about it. So space practice is awesome. Just remember this. The next one I really want you to remember is retrieval practice. So retrieval practice can be done in so many different ways, but what makes it retrieval practice is that when you're studying, you put away your materials. So you put them away so you can't see them. Like if you have slides or books or whatever. And then you attempt to retrieve or bring to your memory the information that you're studying. And so you just need to produce this information in some way. So how you produce the information is really up to you. You can say it out loud, you can write it down, you can draw it, you can make like a graph or a chart, or you can make a table. You can also like do something like act it out. or perform a procedure. It doesn't matter how you do it. That can be up to you. But that process of actually bringing something from your memory and without looking at your materials is very hard. I'm sure we've all experienced this, but we also, when we try to do it, we have a tendency to want to stop and look at our notes, right? But actually, that part that feels hard about retrieving is what makes it so effective, because that act of bringing that information up from your memory is what strengthens your neural pathways and puts it in your memory for long-term retention. So the first step is to retrieve the information without looking at anything, okay? The second step is that you want to check that you're correct and correct yourself. So you don't just retrieve it and then go away. You want to see what you got right and what you got wrong and then correct yourself. So when you do that, when you correct yourself, you're going to be putting that correct information in your memory. So one of the concerns might be like, well, what if I retrieve the wrong information? What if I get it wrong? Will that go in my long-term memory? No, as long as you correct yourself, that correction is going to go in your long-term memory. This is really good because not only does it get this information in your long-term memory, it also helps you see your mistakes and correct them before you have to perform on a test. So if you actually try to do do a practice test or practice teaching the information to someone else or practice doing a procedure, you're going to see where your mistakes are and correct them. And then when you actually have to do your test, you can do it correctly. So that's really great. So I really recommend retrieval practice. So let's go to the next one. The next study strategy I want to talk about, and it seems funny that it might be a study strategy, but it's really important to understand that you need to take care of yourself. So we all live in our bodies and we need to take care of them in order to, do well. So I mentioned this earlier, but getting sleep is really important because that's how information is going to go into your long-term memory. So I know it can be hard to get sleep when there's exam and there's a lot going on, but you really need to think of your program as like a marathon. And so you really need to take time and take care of yourself and make kind of like habits and a plan to really make sure you're getting enough sleep. It's really important to take breaks as well. And so we'll talk about the study cycle next, but the study cycle incorporates breaks, but they can be really useful for, again, just letting your mind rest in between study sessions. And so sleep and breaks are very important. It's also important to get a good nutrition because especially like before exams, you need to make sure you've eaten enough because your mind uses food. That's your energy for your mind. So maybe like meal planning at the beginning of the week might be useful, making sure you always have like healthy snacks with you or whatever works for you to get the nutrition that you need. But just make sure you do prioritize that. And exercise can be really helpful. Like for example, if you're taking a break between your study sessions, just getting up and walking around a little bit. If you can get any sunshine in the Pacific Northwest in winter, please get it. It's helpful for you. But just getting up and walking around a little bit, getting some oxygen in your mind, it can really help you like de-stress and also think a little more creatively and just wake up. So try to do that when you can. So let's talk about the study cycle. This is another study strategy and it has like two components. One for attending class, and then the other one is like afterwards when you're studying. So when you're attending class, it has three sections. You're going to preview the material before class, you're going to attend class, and then you'll review the material. So basically previewing the material can just be like 2 to 5 minutes before class. And what you want to do is look over any material that your faculty member has sent you about what will be covered in class. So this might be slides, or maybe they had you read something before class. And so if it's slides, for example, what you'd want to do is just look over the slide headings. So you don't need to read the whole slides, just look over the general topics that will be covered in class that day. What this does when you're previewing is it gives you this structure of what you're expecting the professor will cover in class that day. And so it basically sets up this structure or this scaffold in your mind of what you're expecting. Then when you attend class, you're going to participate, take notes, do everything. But that's when you're really filling in that information that you expected to learn. And so, and then when you're in class, also think about like, you're going to be getting a ton of information. So be thinking about like, what's really essential that I understand and what's like the essential information, and is there anything like it's good for me to know, but it's not the main point, not my main takeaway today. So try to differentiate that when you're in class. Then what's good is right after class is to review the information. And so this again can be like 2 to 5 minutes after class. And what you're doing is looking through your notes and thinking about like what you really understood well and what you still have questions about. And for the things that you still have questions about, you want to make a plan for how to get that answered. So maybe you're going to ask your professor, maybe you're going to see a peer tutor, maybe you're going to ask a friend, or maybe you're going to look at your class materials, or maybe you have outside materials you might use. So you want to make your plan. And you also want to be thinking about like, what were the outcomes? So if you're really not sure, like, not the outcomes, but the main points from the day. So if you're really not sure what the professor really wanted you to take away from that day, I would suggest just asking them and saying, hey, I think that you wanted us to take away these 5 main points. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly? And then they can tell you yes or no and give you more detail about that. But that's going to be really helpful because then you'll leave class really understanding what you needed to learn that day. So then afterwards, when you're studying, you want to do these study sessions, and these study sessions can be like 45 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes or something. And for each study session, the first step is to set a goal. And so you set like one goal, like, okay, during this session, I'm going to study this one thing. And then you're going to study with focus and you're going to use your good study strategies. And so you do that for the most of the time, and then you take a break. This is where you reward yourself. So you take a break, and this can be doing anything where you're getting your mind off your studying. So maybe you're going to go on a walk, maybe you'll have a snack, maybe you'll call a friend, maybe just relax. Just get your mind off of it. And this is important because that break time again lets your mind relax, lets that information go into your long-term memory, lets you like take a step back and be more creative when you come back, refresh yourself. Then you're going to take time to review how you did. And then this is where you're going to be thinking like what you learned, what you're still struggling with, and what you need to do next. And so you can do your study sessions like this. So you can do multiple study sessions per day if you need to. So let's talk a little bit about note taking. You want to be brief. Figure out shorthand or abbreviations or color coding as works for you. And then as we talked about, it can be challenging to figure out, what you really need to take notes on, because you can't take notes on every single thing your professor says. So you really need to pay attention for like what your professor really wants you to take away from that. And again, if you're not sure at the end of class, that's where you'd go and ask your professor. Like, hey, I think these were the main points. Did I miss anything? The next thing I want to talk about is active reading. And active reading is almost like retrieval practice when you're reading. So this is really great because what it can help you do is make sure you're really retaining that what you're reading long term. You can actually even like explain it to someone else when you're done. And it helps you go through reading faster because I'm sure you've all experienced this when you read through a page and then you realize you were not paying attention to anything you read and have to go back and read it again. So with doing active reading, you just read it once and you're done and you remember it. So the key thing is you can preview it. So basically you can look at the sections before you're reading. And then what you might do is develop questions that you expect to learn in that when you're reading. So if you're reading a chapter, you can look at the headings and then you can think of some questions for yourself that, well, if I read this, I think I'm going to learn this. What that does, it just gives you interest into the reading, because if you're looking for something, you're looking for an answer to something, it's just going to help you stay focused and more interested. Then the real thing that's going to really help you retain the information and get through it is after each paragraph or section, you stop and you just out loud, or you can write it down or even draw a picture, just summarize the information for yourself in like one sentence. So basically, when you have to do that, when you have to like summarize in your own words or your own writing or something, or even your own picture, like what you just learned, that's like almost like a mini retrieval practice. And it makes you like have to really think about it and get that in your memory. And it's very hard. It feels hard when I do it. Um, but it's so worth it, because when you're done reading after you've done that, you remember the information. You do not have to read it again. It's in your long-term memory. I also wanted to encourage you to work with other people, because um, working with other people can be really helpful. It can help you be more creative. You can get energy from them, and they can help you see things or solve problems in ways that you might not have thought of. Also, definitely work with the class peer tutors, because think of them as like someone that's a peer that has been like basically made so that they're going to be there when you need them. And so they're going to guide you through, your problem, like solving the problems or the material. And so I really want to encourage you to take advantage of them. When you're taking tests, here's just a couple tips. Definitely make sure you take care of yourself like before the exam. So rest and eat enough before the test so you do have enough energy for it. Um, if you're able to, and if you have to remember any formulas, or if there's anything you have to like remember, what you might do is on a scratch piece of paper, right when the test starts, if you're allowed to have scratch paper, is just write down all your formulas, or if you have tables or any diagrams or pictures you want to write out or draw. What that does is it makes it so you don't have to like remember that during the test. You just can like put it, do a little brain dump and put it on your scratch paper and then refer to it throughout the test. So that can be really helpful for you. Make sure you read the directions carefully, and remember that like your like tests can be stressful, and so reading the directions, while normally reading directions is simple, just remember to kind of calm yourself and realize you might be stressed, and take that little extra time to make sure you really understood what you're supposed to do. Some exams, might not allow you to like look at the whole exam. You might have to do just one question at a time. So if you have that time of exam, then you, of course, you just have to do one question at a time. But if you have an exam where you can like skip between questions and then come back to ones, you definitely want to like look at the exam and then do the easiest questions first. And then if you're doing multiple choice, sometimes all of the answers might look correct. And so what you want to think about is like, okay, so for this question, if they all look correct, like what are the important factors for like that question? So, if like what are the factors that would make one answer like correct and another one not? And so think about what you can rule out. Also, just remember that, exams can be stressful. And so, if you get a memory block, just don't worry. Just realize like it's normal. People get stressed out, and just kind of try to calm yourself and realize that like you're going to get through it. and be really positive, like be really positive to yourself and think, just remind yourself like, hey, I've studied really hard for this. I've done a good job. I've done retrieval practice. Like I'm going to get through this. And so kind of like doing that self-talk and kind of calming yourself can help you get back on track in the test. Like, hey, I can do this. I'm going to keep going. It's going to be okay. And then you can just kind of wait a minute and then kind of keep going and get through it. Um, so I just wanted to remind you that, these are all tools. Think of them as like, um, you can, one is going to work for you in one way, maybe in one class. In another class, you're going to have to use another one in a different way. So think of them as just a toolkit and you can use them as works best for you. Let's just talk a little bit about time management. So just a reminder about space practice. Space practice can be really helpful for time management, especially when you start studying for a test or you start on a project early. It can give you that time ahead so you can see like how much studying you have to do or how much work something is going to take. And so it helps you plan things out better and it reduces your overall stress. Then when you are making your schedule, like I suggest making a schedule for the semester. Like, so when you're looking for this at the semester, look at like when your exams are, when your papers or projects or things are due, and then try to like schedule those throughout the semester and like when you would need to start working on things. Um, and then also when you're making like a weekly schedule, really build in time for yourself to take care of yourself. So and also realize that there are probably going to be unexpected things that happen. Like you're probably, like you could get sick or, things could come up with your family or, when studying for something could take a lot longer than you anticipate. So just build in time for unexpected things to happen and for you to be able to be flexible and just make your schedule realistic for yourself. Pay attention to what you personally need to do your best and just give yourself time for that. So we're not going to watch this video, but this is something that you could watch later on your own. It's just 8 minutes and it has 6 study strategies in it. We talked about retrieval practice and space practice, but it has 4 other study strategies and it's very short and I feel like it might be really helpful for you. So you can come back and watch this video later if you like. Um, So, and then if I feel like you probably have more than enough reading to do, but if you ever get really excited about study strategies, you can come back and look at these 2 books. They're very readable and even just reading like the first chapter of them can be really helpful. And then a lot of the resources that we talk about these evidence-based study strategies are from the learningscientist.org. So you can always check them out if you're interested. Anyway, thanks for listening. I really hope that you do have a good start to your term and a good start to your program here. And feel free to reach out to our peer tutors in the Center for Learning and Student Success. They've been trained on these study strategies, and so they can help you think about how to apply them in your courses. And they can also talk about what specific study strategies have worked with them and help you think through what might work for yourself. So anyway, thanks so much and take good care.